Hello YouTube! How are you guys doing? It's been a while, but I have been so busy. Now, one thing you're gonna notice right away is, hey Das, this doesn't look the same as what it usually does. You've done something a little different. Something looks a little strange. Well, let me tell you, I have been restless lately. Yeah, I've been using KDE4 for so long, and I thought to myself, the last time I tried Plasma, it wasn't a very good experience. I don't know if I still had this, attitude against it or what it was. But I decided, let's give Plasma 5 a chance inside of Gentoo. So I installed Plasma 5 on a different partition within my laptop, set it all up, got it working, and I have to admit, despite 3 or 4 days of absolute frustration, it's been great. I've liked it. Now when you start saying, now Das, what are you talking about? Frustration, speak to me, come on. Alright. Well, the biggest problem that I had when I decided to go with the Plasma 5 route was that you have to allow for a lot of packages that are not in the stable branch. In fact, I'm not sure any of the Plasma 5 packages are in the stable branch. That's always a little nerve-wracking when you have to start unlocking with a tilde sign to allow for packages to work. And when I was installing the packages, it wasn't so much KDE 5 that was giving me problems, but Qt. Now, Plasma 5, KDE 5, it's all running off of the Qt 5 instead of Qt 4. And Qt 5.4.2, I was running into a lot of issues where all of the packages were failing, and I'm looking at it trying to figure out, why are they failing, and they were a little ambiguous as to what the problem was. But I also found by upgrading Qt to 5.51, a lot of those problems disappeared, and I no longer had an issue with it. So that was kind of cumbersome in itself to reach out and figure this stuff out. And the problem is when you start getting a mixed environment with Qt 5.4.2 and Qt 5.5.1, then you start getting weird issues where packages with KDE start to fail on their compile. And I wasn't realizing that I hadn't gotten all of the Qt packages recompiled to the latest version. If you have a mixed environment with 5.4.2, 5.5.1, etc., you're going to end up with some really strange, screwy stuff. So if you decide to do Plasma 5 with Gentoo, I would suggest at this point in time to mask anything that's 5.4.2 and make sure you unmask everything that's 5.5.1 or better. Well, at least 5.5.1. Make sure you're staying on the same version across board. Once I got my Qt dependencies all figured out and sorted, I was able to continue to install Plasma 5, get it up and running, and it's been really nice. Now, I've had some strange issues. For instance, some of my window decorations. Now, if you notice, I've kind of got this dark theme here going, and if we look up the menu, now I've gotten rid of that main menu. I just don't care for it. I put on a little bit more, a little bit simpler style menu. Now, believe me, author of Lancelot, if you're out there watching me, as if he would, but if he was, man, let me tell you, build Lancelot for this, because I love Lancelot in KDE 4, and I would really like to have it here. But this is nice. This is good enough for me. I like the simple menu system. I like the theming. I like the fact that everything seemed to work without too much tweaking. Now, another suggestion that I will make to anybody who wants to try this, go ahead and use the full Plasma 5 meta instead of the base. I installed the base at first thinking that in KDE, for instance, with 4, you installed the base and you still got everything you would ever need and you were good to go. But in KDE 5 you install the base and you're just like, this is the barest of bones. You're not going to be able to get anything really accomplished. You don't get a console, you don't get a file manager, you just get your main basic GUI with nothing else in there. Now that was a little nerve-wracking at first because you still have to install some KDE 4 packaging, such as I had to install Dolphin, I had to install a console. There are a few things here and there that I've had to put on there. Now the nice thing is you don't end up, when you use the Plasma5 meta package, with this huge bloated KDE system that I feel like that was one of the biggest problems I had when you do KDE 4s. You do a KDE 4 meta and suddenly you've got so many different tools and little widgets and things everywhere that it's just kind of instant bloat. But you still need about a third of them, and the problem is you don't know what you really need until suddenly you're trying to, and this is a good example. You know, I'm working in Plasma and suddenly I find out, I try to right click on a program so I can tell it to open with a specific program, and it says, oh, the helper application for this is not installed. Well, it's not something you have to worry about if you run KDE 4 and you use the full meta package. So what I have found is there's little bits and pieces here and there that, okay, well this is missing, that's missing, well, let's just install this 1 off, this 2 off, this 3 off, etc., etc., etc. And then you're good to go. But as you'll see here, you know, I've just got the basics of basics. I have installed a few games to try because I am a big GOG fan from the Good Old Games website. And so I have tested things like, in fact, I've played the entire Broken Age. I'm working on Fandango. I just recently got Inherit the Earth. Of course, I had to check, of course, with Minecraft and make sure Minecraft would still work. And I had some really strange issues with Minecraft. You know, you would think with something so basic it wouldn't be an issue. But Minecraft requires a lot of overhead. And the video, it was like, oh my goodness. Now, I've got my current system set up into a GNOME partition where I'm testing Cinnamon, which I'm really liking, except for some full screen issues and some weird wonky stuff with sound every once in a while that I don't like. The only way to fix it's kind of like to log out, log back in, and everything's working again. And then of course my primary partition, which still has the KDE 4. Now, in those two partitions, Minecraft had no problem. In fact, with the recent video drivers with Intel, I'm getting up to 60 frames per second with those guys. But with this partition, I was getting some really weird 3 to 5 frames per second, and I know it wasn't my hardware. I knew I had something misconfigured. And what I ended up having to do was make sure, number one, when you're having weird wonky issues like that, make sure your user is set up in the video profiles or the video groups. I actually found that there were some groups that I was just a basic user, and so I had to go in there as root, go into the group management and add myself, and then suddenly once I was added to those things, everything kind of worked itself and started to function properly and much more efficiently as well. I've got my USB controller. This thing is awesome for playing games. It's a Matricom that I got from Amazon. It runs off of a USB 3.0 little dongle that you plug in, and I'm not trying to be an advertisement here. I'm just saying that thing works great. I can program it to do a lot of different things, and it works really well in Gentoo. I've used it in other flavors of Linux as well. And if we move on, I just installed some basic things like the GIMP. K-snapshot, you have, that's one of those things, for instance, that it gets installed with KDE 4 with the regular meta, but that's something you're going to have to do. Now that's another thing, like I was saying, you have to get over, I was kind of afraid to start installing some KDE 4 applications because I'm like, this is Plasma 5. Where's the Plasma 5 equivalent? I want to make sure I've got a stable system. I don't want to introduce a mixed environment with KDE 4 and KDE 5 and end up breaking some things. So I was kind of nervous about that. But so far, everything's been pretty good. Now, I've got Hex Chat on here, but a couple friends of mine have actually gotten me onto WeChat, which is quite interesting, because with WeChat and IRC, I can set up WeChat running on my Raspberry Pi using Gentoo, of course, and don't ask how long that took to compile, because it's a generation 1, and I've got WeChat running there, and with that I'm able to use the website glowingbear.org, I believe, and that is a relay into it, which is great. It runs really well, very lightweight. And so I initially installed Firefox, the bin file, just to get a browser going, because I knew Chromium would take me a couple hours to install. But so far that has been very stable. In the multimedia, I've been doing a lot with multimedia. I love Audacious for my music player. I love Excel for my music for the MP3s. Audacity is great for recording and testing your microphone. Kdenlive, oh man, I have been using that like crazy lately and really enjoying it. I've really gotten into that. I used to use OpenShot, but OpenShot, yeah, it's great for some things, but sometimes you just need a little bit more oomph that Kdenlive allows. I'm not sure if it's Kdenlive or Kdenlive. I'm sure I'll hear about that. Anyway, the M player, of course, for video and VLC when it doesn't work. I don't have Office products installed yet. I didn't put on LibreOffice yet, but I love Calibre to manage my ebooks and for my Kindle and such. And then just basic settings, systems, in here, K3B, Dolphin, I believe K-Sysguard is part of the Plasma 5 now. I did install the Yakwait. I love Yakwait because I can hit F12 here, for instance, and pop up a quick, easy to use terminal if I need one. And I'll use that a lot of times when I'm secure shelling into different stations, and use that as just kind of a drop down into it, and so forth. Basic utilities, I've only installed Kate and Kcalc for a calculator and a text editor. Clipper, I believe, came with Plasma. And, so it's very bare bones. There isn't very much that it comes with right now, but what it does come with is a good stable system. And I'm really glad that Gentoo has made a special profile when you go to build a system to actually choose that you want Plasma, because it sets up a lot of your use flags for you. It sets up a lot of the things that you need to have pre-configured just to get those things to install, and you don't have to worry about it. So that comes in very helpful. Now, I didn't do an upgrade when I did this. I did it from scratch because I wanted to see how that would work. I didn't want to incorporate or accidentally bring in bugs that might be introduced by having a pure KDE4 environment that gets moved up to KDE5. So a lot of that stuff has been cleaned up for me. And I'll be honest, except for these few hiccups that I've had with the screen decorations, which you think, it's just screen decorations, how bad can it be? Well, what happens is this bar here, for instance, just disappears, and everything that you open, your file managers, any application, it's missing the ability to minimize, maximize, close. Now, if you use Alt F4, it won't close. If you do an Alt F2 and say Xkill, it won't close the applications. You're kind of stuck. Now, if it has a file menu and you can click on File and Exit, it will close the application through that. Otherwise, everything else is just kind of stuck in a spot. And then sometimes I'd find that if I logged out, logged back in, everything was working again. Sometimes I'd find I have to log out. Now, I start with my GUI with StartX. I'm not using a desktop manager like KDM or GDM or anything like that. I just do it with StartX because I prefer to boot into the command line interface, because there's a lot of times I don't need to go into a GUI interface right away. So I'll just do it. When I do a log out, it takes me back to command line interface, and I just do StartX, get back in. Sometimes that works. Sometimes I'd have to do an exit at a command line interface, log back in, from the login prompt and then start X again and it'll fix. And it's just kind of wonky. I'm not sure what is causing it. I really haven't seen an error log that I can find that tells me this is breaking. But considering that I had to unmask a lot of quote-unquote unstable packages to make this work, I think if that's the only thing I'm running into, it's pretty good. And my honest opinion is Plasma is getting there very fast, very quickly. It is looking sharp, it is looking nice, things are running well on this. I really like the Dark Breeze. The Dark Breeze, you say, what is Dark Breeze? Well, Dark Breeze is this new look and feel to the windows. As you can see here, the darker images there. If we go into our settings menu, you'll notice that I like the grays. I like the opacity that's there, but still I like the fact that things are dark. I don't like a white desktop coming at me and blinding me. I like a darker look and feel to things with color to pop. That's why I love this thing. The colors on these, it just runs well. But if you go into the workspace theme, for instance, you've got this Breeze, which is the default for KDE5, and you've got the Dark Breeze or Breeze Dark, and I really enjoy that. And you can set up all kinds of different, they don't really have many desktop themes here. I have just the Breeze Dark and Oxygen, and I enjoy those. Those are good. But I also, I'm trying to figure where you go into it. It's been a while since I kind of looked at some of the stuff. Because once you get your settings the way you like, and you don't really mess with it that much. Application styles is probably what it is. Windows decoration. Now I've been playing with some of those. I really like this glow glass right here. Kind of gives you a darker window background with, I think that's more of a Mac style, but you can, of course, once you get in here, you can tweak it, find it, and the nice thing is you can go to get new decorations, just like you've always have in the other KDE, and you can download different themes and setups. And I really like, the GNOME application style. You can set this up, for instance, to be exactly what you want it to be, and I haven't set it because I was doing some testing. I want it back to Breeze Dark, and that makes your GDK applications look just like your other applications. And I kind of noticed here that they've made it a little bit more GNOME-like in a way in some aspects of the system settings, but everything seems to work very well. Had no problems getting printers and those sort of things. Everything else on the back end, that's the great thing about Gentoo. Everything else is pretty much the same. Everything works proper the way you like it to work. So I've been using this. You asked me how long. I've been having it about 2 weeks now. I wanted to give an overview of how things were running before I had time to forget those little things that bothered me the most. Yet at the same time, give it enough of a chance that I can say, don't you hate it, those reviews that you get, "Hey, I installed this thing yesterday and it's fabulous." And you install it, and 2 days later or 3 days later, it was great for the first couple of days, and then it just fell apart. It's like those product reviews you get online. "Yeah, I just got this in the mail. It's the most wonderful thing in the world." Yeah, but how is it 2 months later? How is it a couple weeks later? So I wanted to kind of give myself a little bit of a chance to talk about this and look at things, and then give you guys an honest opinion, because I know the last time I did something about Plasma 5, I didn't have very many good things to say, but then again, I was kind of stuck in that mindset of, this ain't the way I like it. I can't make it look the way my other stuff looked. We get stuck in that rut sometimes, and then we need to realize that, let's give the new look and feel a chance. Let's let it speak for itself before we go trying to undo everything the developers have done. And I've been trying to have a little bit more of an open-mindedness to that sort of thing. And so far, I've really enjoyed it. I want to point out too, I was able to find this background, just the very far background, these nice swooping lines and so forth, on the internet somewhere, and then I was able to incorporate using GIMP some different layers, and I added in the Gentoo logo over here and made it a little bit see through, and then I added, this is actually a screenshot from console, and then I just took the writing and was able to get rid of everything else, and then added in. I just kind of thought it was kind of a neat look. Now you're probably wondering about the widgets and things like that, and I don't have anything on here. I've made it as clean and crisp as possible. And yes, I sometimes miss some of those things, but there are still some great options here. When you go to add widgets, I'm really impressed at how much they have already built into Plasma 5 that you can install and set up. Now, I like having the network monitor to see how things are going. I also like having the CPU monitor to see what my status is there, and I was kind of looking for, that's the hard disk. I was trying to find it there where our CPU load. So you can pull this out, for instance, and then you can see all the CPUs that are there, and then they'll start to operate and give you some idea of what's going on. The only thing I don't like about this is you can go in there and you can select which ones you want, but you can't resize this very well, and I'm still having trouble with right click every once in a while too. If I don't, but that's my mouse problem, that's not Plasma. But if we go here, you really just, I can't seem to find a way to resize the widgets the way I used to like to resize them. And some widgets are easy to just pick up and move around, like this one is. But I found, for instance, if I added the, come on, alright, that's a new one. Yeah, problems in action, there's always these little things here and there. There were other widgets I had added to the screen that once they were added, I couldn't move them around the screen. I couldn't change their location. Now I'd really like to be able to resize some of these things, and even I'd like to customize a little bit more of how they look and feel. I do really miss my oh, that's a neat feature here. I forgot to tell you. If you remove something here and you go, oh no, I made a mistake, I didn't mean to move that, it gives you about 5 seconds to go down there and click on that and say restore it and put it back on there. Because yeah, sometimes you do a foul up with your fingers as you're doing some other stuff, and if you don't have stuff locked up properly, there's other ways to get to that. For instance, if we move that up to here, and you'll notice too, this is a little feature. I don't know if it's in KDE4, but I saw it here and I thought I'd try it out. No matter what the size is of the window, let's see if I can get that to work. If we get that there, and say we make that bigger, now if we move it around, see that square change too. That helps you kind of decide if you want something to be right center, for instance, or move it around, and it, of course, still has all the snapping and other things set up there. So, there we go. You don't want to look at me. You don't want my big face being too big. But there's other ways to get to the widgets there. Because you go there and add widgets, and that'll pop it up. So if that one starts giving you some problems, and I'll give you a quick rundown here if I find the that one I was telling you about. I know it's here somewhere. There's so many different things you can pick and choose from, and it's really nice. And oh, that's another thing I was thinking about. I was trying to get my touchpad to work, and this touchpad isn't working, and so I tried to install KCM touchpad, and it says such and such application is blocking KCM touchpad. Well, if you look at eQuery U and that program, you'll see that there's a touchpad use option, that use flag that you can put on. When you do that, it adds touchpad functionality right into the settings. So if you're looking for something and it's not there, look at the use flags and make sure that it's not something that's already just being built into Plasma 5. And that will really help you out a lot. Now this is the one I believe I was having some issues with. Once I pop it out here, if I try to move it around, it won't let me move it. The other one I could grab it and move it around and do different things, but this one, no, I can't. And this one, of course you can change it. You can change the CPU monitor, and for some reason you cannot do CPU separately. I'd love to be able to do CPU separately, because I like to see each individual one. I'll give you a quick story because I know I'm going a little too long here. But I was having some tremendous lag when compiling programs. Chromium, for instance, suddenly went to 4 or 5 hours to compile, and it used to only take about an hour and a half. What I found out finally by looking at my little CPU monitor in KDE4 was I was compiling code at 900 megahertz. Now I've got a Core i7 2.4 gigahertz, but it was only compiling at about almost a little over a third of its capability. And that was ridiculous. So I figured out what the problem was, got it so it was compiling at 2.4 gigahertz, and voila, it started compiling that stuff in 1.5 hours to 2 hours instead of 5 hours. So sometimes it's nice to have a monitor. We can look here, for instance, see that the CPU is being used at 10%. The average clock time is 2.4 gigahertz there. It shows me how much memory. It goes away after a while that I'm using out of my 16 gigs. And you know, I don't even know why we bother with swap partitions anymore. They always say they're being used at 0 utilization. I'm beginning to think that there's no reason whatsoever for swap partitions. Now, it could be because I have so much RAM in this, and if you had a system with a lot less RAM, you'd need that swap partition. But right now, I don't see where that's needed. Another neat thing is you can set this to circular, and if we apply it, you can kind of get a little pie type option, or you've got your compact bars as well, which is just down there a little bit. But you can't resize this window. You can click on it to get your system monitor, but you just can't do anything else to it. So that's a little disappointing to me. And they don't have, of course, some of the things like I love my little Luna module because, oh yeah, this is how you can do the undo and it runs back. But I miss my little Luna module to show me the phases of the moon. But there's some things you just have to get used to. You work with it. Any which way, I hope you've enjoyed this little ramble of a review. If you're interested in Plasma 5 with Gentoo, I just warn you, it's going to take you a little bit longer to get through some of those dependency issues, fix some of the use flags, and making sure that everything gets compiled properly. I normally take less than a day of compiling to do all of KDE4, and even though these were a lot fewer packages to install, it still took me about 3 full days. Now, of course, that's with work in the middle and only doing this when I had a chance to actually pay attention to it. But it took me about 3 days to finally get everything working, figure out some of the broken packages. And it wasn't broken packages, it was the used dependencies that I had and stuff like that. So be patient with it, give it a chance, because once it starts to work, it's fun, it's great. I'm really now looking forward to Plasma coming out. I was concerned about the Switch, but I'm going to keep this around and maybe make it my main desktop for a while. We'll see. If I run into any other issues, I'll try to document those sort of things and let you know. Otherwise, I hope you have a good day. I'm screwing up my outro, man. If it's morning, evening, noon, or night, whatever you're having, have a good one. We'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.